Good evening. Welcome to the Village Board meeting for the Village of Pleasantville. Today is Monday, April 9, 2012. If you are watching live on Monday, April 9, we encourage you to call in if you have comments or questions. The call-in number is 769-1677. Our next work session is a week from today, Monday, April 16 at 7 p.m. And our next regular meeting is 2 weeks from today, Monday, April 23 at 8 p.m. with a work session at 7. As always, you can watch us on Cablevision or Verizon Cable TV or at pctv76.org, both live and in on-demand webcasts. So we have a number of things on our agenda tonight, but the first of them and the most exciting of them is the appointment of a new police lieutenant. We have quite a few members of our force here tonight, as well as Sergeant Eric Grutner, soon to be Lieutenant Eric Grutzner's family, and we have a ceremony to launch. So let me invite Chief Love to come and offer a few words, and then we'll have the swearing-in ceremony.
Unless they want us to sit through the budget presentation, don't you want to do that?
Good evening. Mayor Scher, Administrator Dwyer, village trustees, community members, friends and family of the Pleasantville Police Department. I want to thank all of you for coming tonight and participating in this promotion ceremony. Your attendance pays tribute to our department, as well as the 18 years of dedicated service from Sergeant Eric Grutzner. As I look upon those in attendance tonight, I see great strength. The presence of our colleagues demonstrates unity and strength that is predicated on our collective ability and desire to commitment to provide police excellence. Tonight on Sergeant Grutzner's promotion to lieutenant, he joins the village management team. I consider us fortunate to have such a professional, hard-working individual with passion for service and who is committed to providing strong leadership to the men and women of our department. I would be remiss if I did not mention the outstanding years of dedicated service provided by Michael Wilson. I want to personally thank him for his dedication to this community, the department, and for demonstrating and instilling the knowledge and commitment required to deliver the excellent service our residents deserve and expect. I know that I speak on behalf of everyone in this room and offer the heartiest congratulations on a job well done. You will be missed. I wish you and your family all the best in your future endeavors. Policing our community has become increasingly complex. There has never been a time in history where collaboration is so necessary in order for us to resolve community issues and problems. We are committed to find innovative strategies that rely on mutually beneficial and fiscally responsible partnerships. In these economic times, we need to re-examine priorities for the purpose of ensuring that we provide a safe and secure community at a reasonable cost. I am confident that Lieutenant Eric Grutzner will work diligently to provide the necessary infrastructure needed to support these ideals. I believe the men and women of the Pleasantville Police Department are highly dedicated and motivated. They are amongst the finest examples of police professionals anywhere. It is an honor to serve this community knowing that the people within our organization understand we have a calling like no other, and that duty is what drives us forward to serve each and every day. It will continue to be our priority to ensure that we have a well-trained and properly equipped department working under the best of conditions possible given the nature of our work. Without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Sergeant Eric Grutzner for the commencement of his promotion to lieutenant in the Pleasantville Police Department.
Sergeant, that's the last time anyone will use that term. It is a pleasure, an honor to welcome you here to this podium for this purpose and to see a longstanding member of the Pleasantville Police Department who has worked his way through the ranks of patrolman to sergeant and now to lieutenant. If you will raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Eric Grutzner,
I, Eric Grutzner,
do solemnly swear
that
I will support the Constitution of the United States,
I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of New York,
the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Code of the Village of Pleasantville,
and the Code of the Village of Pleasantville,
and that I will faithfully discharge
the
duties of the Office of Police Lieutenant according to the best of my ability. So help me God.
So help me God.
Welcome, Lieutenant. we have a pinning ceremony.
Jessica, would you come up, please?
We always say this is your chance to get back at it.
You can pick up.
I think we need a family picture, don't we? Come on, how about a family picture? Future Lieutenants of America.
Turn around, bud.
Congratulations.
Say a few words.
First of all, thank you to Chief Love, the Village Board, Administrator Dwyer, and to Lieutenant Wilson also, who had a hand in this process. It's been a great honor for me to serve this village for the past 18 years, and I look forward to continuing to do so in a professional and responsible and exceptional manner. I'd also obviously like to thank my family who's here, my wife Jessica, my son Beckett, my daughter Kai, my mom who came down. And truly it's a very humbling thing to see so many of the people who I work with here tonight, some of the people who I worked with in the past, who took the time out of their lives to come and support me during this time. This is it's a very humbling and wonderful experience. I'm very lucky to have worked in this village, made some of the friendships within and with outside the department that I have, and I look forward to continuing that into the future. So once again, thank you all very much.
Thank you, Chief. We will take one resolution here out of order and go back to our resolutions later, but Colleen, how about resolution number 69?
With pleasure. Resolved that the Board of Trustees, based upon the recommendation of the Police Chief, hereby approves the appointment of Eric Grutzner to the position of Police Lieutenant, effective as of 12:01 a.m., Monday, April 16, 2012, at a salary of $125,460. As per the rules and regulations of Westchester County Department of Human Resources, said appointment is subject to a probationary period of not less than 12 weeks to a maximum of 52 weeks. And further resolved that the mayor is authorized to sign the management confidential benefits agreement with Eric Grutzner.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. So we encourage you all to stay for our budget hearing, but we won't be offended if you do.
Eric, do you want the
It's a
resolution?
copy.
Are you heading anywhere? The mayor was asking.
And I kind of think of him as,
Hi, guys.
I don't know if it's testimony to your
He's
abilities or just my longevity, but it seems like yesterday you were a sergeant. We just pinned you a sergeant. Your wife just pinned you a sergeant, so congratulations.
Good luck. Go ahead.
So cute.
How cute.
A happy occasion. Congratulations
Good.
to Lieutenant Grutzner and to the Grutzner family, to Chief Love, and to the police department as a whole. I think it portends good times ahead. So we'll go back to our regularly scheduled activities, so we'll back up a little bit. I had a couple of announcements to make. And the first of those was that, as I may have mentioned the last meeting, there is a Relay for Life being organized on behalf of the American Cancer Society over at Pace University. And I will find that stack of paper. Here it is. anybody who is interested in participating in the Relay for Life for the American Cancer Society at Pace University, it takes place starting at about 6 p.m. on Friday, April 20th in the Goldstein Fitness Center and continues all night to 4 a.m. on Saturday, April 21. Most of us don't stay that whole time period. There are lots of ways to help, including ways to help without going at all. So cancer certainly has affected just about every family, just about every person has either been affected by it or knows someone who has. And so I encourage you to take a look at what is really a great program. It's www.relayforlife.org/Pace University. And I can also say I did a brief program with a young man named Chris Alessandro, who is a sophomore at Pace and one of the co-chairs of this event. Turns out that he actually is also one of the ringleaders of a similar relay that takes place in Yorktown, where he hails from, that originally got started when the Yorktown high school community lost a teacher to cancer. And so Chris is a great and lively young man, did a great job on the television program, and is a great example of the kinds of programs Pace is running and seeking to engage the Pleasantville community with. So I encourage everybody, it's Friday, April 20th. Take a look online at relayforlife.org/Pace University. PleasantvilleRecycles.org, our local recycling committee, continues to be active and vigorous, and they have a newsletter which you can get on a monthly basis by email. If you go to PleasantvilleRecycles.org, you can sign up for that newsletter as well as find out about various things that are going on. Two things worth reporting right off the bat, and that is that there are a bunch of church rummage sales going on in the spring, including the annual one here in Pleasantville at the Presbyterian Church, which will start to receive drop-off items on April 23rd and 24th. You can check out more information on that at www.pvillepresby.org, but it's just one of multiple places where you can find a place to take stuff that still has value and instead of throwing it out, have it find a second home. The other thing to report is to mark your calendars for April 21. You'll be up anyway because you're coming back at 4 a.m. from the Relay for Life. At 9 a.m. through 3 p.m. at the DPW garage will be Pleasantville Recycles Day. Again, our recycling committee has organized this, and among other activities, they're going to have a special focus on dropping off used bicycles and used sports equipment, balls, shin guards, lacrosse sticks, etc., all being received down at the DPW Recycling Center. The bicycles will be donated to Recycle a Bicycle, and there will be also opportunities to pick up used sports equipment for other members of the family, kind of an opportunity for stuff that people have outgrown to find a second home among other Pleasantville families. So, as always, there's lots more to go on. You can get details at PleasantvilleRecycles.org. I wanted to mention also that the progress of the J.A. Henkel's Corporation in moving through approvals for their proposed reuse of the MLA property is continuing. The Henkel's company was at the zoning board a couple of weeks ago and achieved all of the variances that they needed. They're back at planning, and so all systems go on that process, and we are optimistic that a shovel will be in the ground at some point in the year 2012, so that would be a great development.
And did
for
you
the
notice they took the
economic
little
life.
house down?
Yes, the house at the corner of Castleton Street, which has been in declining condition for quite some time, was demolished and removed by the Stop and Shop company as part of the process of preparing the property for its eventual transfer over to Henkel. So good news on that front. Good news on lots of other fronts with various activities going on, lots of development activity going on, and hopefully we'll have some very good news to report in some other sites before long. And then I won't focus on it tonight, but more to be said about the Northern Westchester Energy Action Coalition, which Pleasantville has now joined. They ran an energy summit over at the Ossining Public Library a couple of weeks ago that I attended along with Helen Muir and Libby Brenneschultz on behalf of the CAC, and lots of great stuff going on there, including information about Energize New York and opportunities that residents can have for a free or very low-cost energy audit for their homes that I have now signed up for, and which almost everybody who has signed up for has turned out to reap not just tens of dollars, but hundreds of dollars in benefits in the first year of a heating season. So plenty to do over the spring and summer, fall before that all happens. Anybody else have anything to add to the list?
I do. I had the pleasure of attending a Rotary meeting 2 weeks ago, and they were searching for a trustee liaison, and I guess as the newest victim, I have agreed to serve in that capacity.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, sure. And the second thing is I just wanted to let everyone know that Pleasantville ASO, which is our soccer organization here in town, donated a 50-inch flat-screen TV to the Recreation Department. They utilize it for trainings and decided instead of just bringing one in once in a while, they donate one. So we are the happy recipients of that.
Fantastic news.
Yes.
Thank you for that, and thank you for taking over the mission of being a good liaison to Rotary. They do all kinds of great stuff, and Chief Charletti used to be a member there and has now retired from it as he did from the village, so
I got sang to and everything.
Yeah.
That was the first.
glad to have you in that role.
Dollars.
All right, our next order of business is the public hearing and description of our forthcoming budget. Patty Dwyer is in three-point position. Is there a motion to open the public hearing on the fiscal year 2012-2013 budget?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We will get out of the way.
No, not a problem. Thank you. I can't believe it's that time of year again. Comes up quick. And maybe, Brian, if you can cut down one of those lights, and I'll see if Shane, a little more, huh, Shane?
Yeah. It works for me, I don't know if it works for you.
Yeah, well, I'm okay. I'm going to have to wing it because I should bring one of those little lights. My computer screen is out, so.
That's okay, right?
I can't see.
All right. Can you see, Jonathan?
That's all right, I'm good.
Okay. All right,
No
Mr. Mayor,
dangers.
members of the board, thank you so much for allowing me to introduce the tentative budget for our upcoming fiscal year. As most of you know, our fiscal year begins on the 1st of June and runs through the 31st of May. And it's our obligation every year to present a budget for public hearing no later than the 15th of April. Also in accordance with village law, the Board of Trustees must adopt this budget no later than the 1st of May. So sometime between now and May 1st, we have to continue to do some diligence and come up with what we believe is going to be our operating plan for the next fiscal year. And this evening, what I'm going to do is take an approach to this budget by introducing it on basically a high-level executive summary and then open up the floor for questions. But I'd like to give an overview of the structure of the budget and some of the issues that we're confronting. The village's budget is comprised of several different funds, and these funds are all designated in accordance with the finance laws of villages and also of the state of New York. Our general fund is our most familiar fund. It supports, in terms of operations, categories such as general government, the police department, public works, parks and recreation, health and human services, employee benefits, contingency accounts, retained services, and the like. And we're going to go through each of these categories of expense to explain to you how we come about to this year's appropriations plan, which is $13,286,379 as of the filing of the tentative budget. There have been a few changes made as a result of budget reviews, but right now we're hovering around a tax rate of 2.6 to 2.8%. Essentially, the way this budget was constructed, it would call for the budget to be supported by taxes, by surplus, which is essentially our fund balance from prior fiscal years' surpluses, and other types of revenues, which consist of those revenues that are obtained through programs and fees and things like other taxes such as sales tax, taxes on utilities, rents from things like the cable cell sites and the like. So we'll go through this in some detail. As a consequence of what's being presented, the tax rate, which is the rate that is applied to people's assessed value, is expected to increase approximately 2.87%. This would result on average of a tax bill increase of just under $100 for the average house that's assessed at about $45,000 on the village's tax roll. So it's about a $95 to $96 tax increase in terms of impact, the way this budget is currently constructed. There will be some confusion as people have expectations with respect to the New York State law that requires tax levies not exceed 2% or CPI that's in effect as of January of the year of the budget adoption. Whichever is greater is really the extent you're allowed to increase your levy. With respect to this budget, the tax levy is the number that we are anticipating appropriating, $8,444,930. That does not exceed 2% of the prior year's levy. So the budget conforms in all respects at this point in time to the tax cap that's in effect. I hope that makes sense because it's a very complicated subject. I'm trying to boil it down. Again, the general fund has categories of expense. I'm summarizing them just for the sake of convenience tonight, but each one of these categories have substantial line items underneath them that deal with their cost of personnel, their cost of operations, and their cost of services and other things related to their departments and functions. General government support consists of costs attributed to the management of the village, the Board of Trustees, the Justice Court, administration such as my office and the clerk's office, financial administration, retained services, which are those concerning third-party engineering services, legal services, and auditing services. Information technology, which is our budget that supports operations that cover many departments, such as the website expenses, geographic information systems, and computer services. Insurance claims that run the gamut from everything. Insurance and claims, I'm sorry. Insurance just for the village, it's general liability policies, automotive and fleet policies, insurance for boards and for commissions and for the police department, etc. Claims such as small claims that may fall under deductibles and also certiorari, so large claims that come in, and contingency and reserves. Compared to last year, this category of expense is actually decreasing slightly. The second significant category of expense is in the area of public safety. This includes not only our police department, but also our building department's budget. Those are classified this way according to a uniform system of accounts, so they're not separated. So this budget of $3,114,959 is not only the police department, but it's also operations and expenses related to building and some part-time code enforcement activity. You can also see crossing guards in here, and all of the elements of the police department, including patrol division and administration, parking enforcement as well. Public Works, most people are familiar with the term, but maybe not with the categories of expense that are associated with this particular function. Road maintenance, snow removal, street lights, sanitary sewers. You can see the list here. We include park maintenance. We've made changes from an organizational perspective several years ago to put the Parks Department under the Public Works Department. So this budget has increased because of the change in allocation. But essentially, it's a very slight increase from the prior year, and the proposed budget of the overall budget is $1,816,667. We did have a budget review. We took out about $18,000 from this budget so far, and we may be able to do a little more before it's time to adopt it. Outreach services, this category of expense concerns mostly our programs that are run out of the Clinton Street Center, senior recreation and senior services that involve home-delivered meals, all kinds of counseling and placement services and the like. Some transportation budget for the seniors as well. Our nutrition program and activities that take place down at the center. It's a very small component budget, but nonetheless a very significant one in terms of the impact and a community-based program, which this is. It's supported by about $475,000. The recreation budget also includes a component that people would not be aware would have to be included in here. That's essentially the library support. So of this $1.5 million, there's about $850,000 attributed to our share of expenses for the Mount Pleasant Public Library System. The rest of this money is for recreation programs and recreation administration. The majority of this budget is funded by like-kind revenue from program fees. And as many people know, we have a very active recreation program in the village. Community services covers things that involve other boards other than our village board and the legislative board, particularly the planning board functions, zoning and architectural review board functions, including some small committee work, and PCTV's budget, where we have a contract with PCTV to film our board meetings and other public events throughout the year. This area of the budget is smallest of all the budget categories of expense, just over $175,000. The next two areas, which are considered the back of the book, they actually affect every other category of expense. However, they're accounted for separately. What I mean by that is in the police personnel budget, certainly the personnel expenses come with expenses for fringe benefits, and the administrative budget, certainly our budget comes with expenses for fringes. However, those numbers are not recognized in those particular categories. They're actually recognized at the end of the budget, in the back of the budget, and categorized all at once instead of separated out by function. So in the back of the book, you'll find a section for employee benefits. These are obligations that the village is subject to either by contractual obligation or by law to pay. There is approximately $3.2 million worth of benefits that inure to the employees annually. Most of those are attributed to pension systems, health insurance, and Social Security. And finally, in the general fund, one of the last categories of expense are for debt payments and transfers. These are payments that we make annually to support long-term debt instruments that the village borrowed, such as bonds and sometimes some short-term notes. The principal and interest payments that are due have to be supported every year by appropriations. And our debt service, as it's called, is approximately $1.4 million to pay down the debt, principal and interest on borrowings. To support that appropriations plan, the general fund derives its revenue sources primarily from property taxes. I don't believe that's a big surprise. In municipalities, that is the primary source of revenue. 72% of our revenue that supports operations comes from property taxes, and you can see the breakdown from other fees and charges. We are not dependent at all on state and federal aid. You'd see a different picture if you were looking at a school district budget. They have some other sources of revenue that expose them to great risk and concern, particularly from other levels of government. We're fortunately fairly independent with respect to our destiny here, and can affect our budget and not be too concerned about some of the extraneous things going on the state level. After property taxes, pass-through taxes are the second highest source of revenue. Those are taxes that you see on things like phone bills or utility bills. Also, sales taxes that the county has a longstanding agreement with its municipalities to share some of its sales tax revenue. In addition to the general fund, we have a separate fund where we separate our tax receipts that are attributed to refuse collection. We have to do this by law because we do not provide sanitation services to commercial properties in the village. We only collect residential properties. So because of that, we can't use our general assessment roll in order to balance out the cost of services and to attribute it to all the taxpayers. Our refuse fund is just under $1 million. It's a $958,000 fund. It provides, again, residential sanitation services on a unit basis to households. There's approximately 2,300 units. We then have formulas in place that when applied, break out calculations as to what the refuse district charges will be on a per unit basis. You can see, based on the current budget, there is a slight increase in the fees attributed to refuse services for condominium up to the 3-family rate. Again, because this fund is considered to be, well, I think our treasurer and deputy treasurer and I agree that this fund should be subject to tax cap as well, because its revenue is derived from a tax source. The budget as proposed, at least for this fund, also meets the parameters of the New York State tax cap and is under 2%, or CPI, which I didn't explain, was 2.9. That number is higher than 2%. So the CPI for the current year that would affect our budget is 2.9%. Okay, the third fund of significance is our water fund. This fund is used to provide both money to operate and maintain our water distribution system. It also supports our capital investment in the Millwood Treatment Facility in Newcastle, New York, which the village owns a portion of that plant for the purpose of producing filtered drinking water at the source. We have a budget of about $3.5 million that supports our water fund. That money is collected through water rents, predominantly, which are basically charges on a per 1,000 cubic foot basis for consumption. This is our water rate schedule. We need to discuss sometime, preferably by the time we adopt this budget, but if not, sometime by the time we start our fiscal year, some of the concerns we have about the ability of the water fund to generate revenue. Its revenue sources are highly elastic because it depends on consumption. It also, which depends on demand, and also depends on conditions that are beyond anybody's control with respect to weather and other variables. So we
Patty,
Yeah.
I think it's fair to also say it depends on the whims of the city to charge us for raw water costs, which have been going through the roof, too.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of people don't realize, and I forget to mention that we don't have water to sell. We resell. Our water comes from the city of New York, and it comes to us in a raw state, which is not potable. It doesn't. In other words, it doesn't meet drinking water standards, and they don't pretend it does. So,
However, they charge us for,
yeah.
for palatable water.
Well,
The water board, that's their standard.
Yeah, there's a lot of things I could qualify that in a lot of ways, but
Yes,
you're right. I mean,
yes.
the bottom line is we're charged at a high rate for bulk water purchasing. Most of Westchester County gets its water from the City of New York's water supplies. We're not alone there, and we have to filter that water because of our location within the aqueduct system and the reservoir system. So our costs are a lot higher in terms of producing potable water than some other communities around us right now. But Trustee Cunningham is correct. The city does raise the rates indiscriminately, and we do have to pass those increases through. We're also anticipating in the next year closure of one of the aqueducts that, the primary aqueduct that we draw water from with Newcastle, which is able to feed the water filtration plant without an extraordinary amount of electricity or pumping. Once that aqueduct is shut down for maintenance, we will be switching over to the redundant aqueduct, which is the Croton Aqueduct. However, we have to draw from a very deep connection in that aqueduct system, and we expect to have some extraordinary expenses related to the cost of electricity to produce water from that particular aqueduct. And it should not impact this budget this year, but next year we will have to make some significant changes. And I think it presents an opportunity for us to look at how we're structuring our water rates in general in the next coming months. Another fund that we set aside and segregate some of our revenue is the pool fund. We do this in order to ensure that the cost of operations and maintenance of this fund are paid for by the users of the pool facility. However, as should be anticipated, that facility is a general asset for the entire village, the complex in and of itself, and any of the capital improvements that are done to that facility typically are paid for by the general fund at large. But right now the operating budget is about $273,000. It's a very well-enjoyed facility, and as you know, we are looking at opportunities to do some improvements to the filtration system and the bathhouse there in the coming years. Our budget is subject to several things that are worth mentioning. Of course, it's just a plan, but there are always extraneous things occurring that I like to consider economic issues that we need to just be aware of when we put together these types of expenditure plans. In particular, the interest rate environment that we're operating in, as the board is aware, and I'm sure most people who are watching are aware that there hasn't been any movement of consequence in the interest rate environment, meaning that we're not earning any investment dollars on our money. And on the other side, we are able to borrow money at a very reasonable rate because we're at an all-time low with respect to the rates that are being found out in the bond market. We have stabilized this year with respect to our property valuation and certiorari activity. We anticipated early on that we would see perhaps a 2% decline in assessed value over the next few years, 2% per year. We did not see that this year. In fact, our taxable assessed value that this budget is based on is rather stable compared to the previous year. So it helped with our long-range outlook in terms of where we think we may be heading with respect to use of fund balance and with respect to the tax rates. And similarly, pension and health care obligations have seemed to at least recognize the economic climate that we're operating within. We continue to see extraordinary increases from the New York State retirement system simply because those investments in that plan are based on projections of anywhere from 7 to 8% interest earnings. And as we all know, nobody has been seeing those types of interest earnings, so those calculations and the obligations that that plan anticipated being able to meet have to be met by contributions from the members, such as the village and all the other municipalities that participate in the plan. We also have to be guided by our own fiscal policies and our own capital planning goals, which still remain to be worked out. And as well, we have collective bargaining agreements with all but 9 of our employees. Those agreements with respect to the Police Benevolent Association are ongoing right now. We're in negotiation. However, the PBA, as the board knows, is working on an expired contract. The CSEA is about to expire on the 31st of May. So we have some work cut out for us in terms of coming up with some sustainable short or long-term collective bargaining agreements. We also have to continue our master plan update initiatives. We're branching now in the area of recreation, which I think is a very good opportunity to look into recreation plan updates. But also we need to refocus on downtown, on the A1 district in particular, with respect to some of the economic development opportunities that may present themselves to the village. And then finally, the mayor mentioned the Northeast Energy Consortium that the village is now a member of. It really is in our best interest to start working on some green initiatives and sustainability applications throughout our operations, in particular perhaps with our efforts to do things like off-street parking lots and some of our off-site drainage, that we look at more opportunities to do things like the rain gardens and impervious or pervious, parking lot surfacing, which is done, which is being done in many areas. I'm going to leave it there for now. If is that Mindy on the end?
Yes.
Could you flip one light on, Mindy? Sure. This will give me some access to some of these notes because I don't have any light here. Okay, thank you. That's an overview, and as I said, that's a high-end summary. There's so much more detail, as everybody could imagine. You just can't come up with a $13 million expenditure plan in a dozen slides, but I wanted to just touch on what I thought would be the framework and then open up the floor for questions and from the board or from anybody who's interested in the audience. While you get seated again, I'd like to recognize our treasurer and deputy treasurer who have done a yeoman's job again in helping me assemble this budget this year for this presentation, and also have done a great job in keeping us up to date with respect to our current fiscal condition, and I can't tell you enough how much I rely and depend on them for not only for the work they do, but for the accuracy of the work and for their diligence. So Mary and Pam, thank you for joining me tonight. Much appreciated. Okay, Mr. Mayor,
Patty,
it's
could you
all yours.
just touch in a general way on the status of the budget we're now in and that will end at the end of May?
Yeah, the general fund, the way we see it, will end up running very close to its projected outcomes. We anticipated that the budget would spend somewhere around $12.6 million, and we anticipated the revenue to be required from a fund balance appropriation of about $675,000. We believe we're going to be there, right on that budget. We have a couple of structural issues we're watching carefully. Every year we anticipate some funds to be transferred from the water fund to the general fund in order to support those operations. And the way the water fund is appearing, at least in terms of its revenue stream, we don't believe we're going to be able to do that this year. So despite the fact that we won't be transferring, or we don't project to transfer that money, we still anticipate ending this year with a fund balance in excess of $2 million, approximately $2.1 million. We started the year with $2.6 million. The other funds, the water fund, as I said, that is in a different condition. We do expect to have a positive fund balance at the end of the year. However, we expect that fund balance to decrease from 12% down to just above 2%, undesignated, by the end of this fiscal year. The refuse fund is a rather healthy fund balance, and the pool fund doesn't necessarily have to run a fund balance because it just supports its operations and maintenance. Is that close to where you want to be with?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I just add one thing, if you don't mind? The feat that they had to accomplish here. I just want to lay out the equation of how you get to the number to get your 2% tax cap, which is
Sure. Yeah.
ridiculous. But, I'm a visual learner. So I had to put this math equation down, and I had a little help from from Mary, a couple of phone calls back and forth. But you take your tax levy of your prior fiscal year, you multiply that by your tax base growth factor. Where you get that is from New York State, Tax and Finance Department. You add your pilots, which are payments in lieu of taxes. You minus any tort actions exceeding 5%. You multiply that by the allowable levy, which is CPI or 2%, whichever is lower. Then you minus the pilots back out of it. And then you take, beginning in 2013, any available carryover from your prior fiscal year. And then you add in the exclusions associated with growth, meaning your pension costs, and how you get to that number is a whole other equation, and that gives you your tax levy limit.
You're hired.
I mean,
That's
I mean,
great.
just think
You're
about
absolutely
that. That was
right.
just like, that equation is over 2 pages, and in order to figure out the adding in the exclusions associated with growth is really a whole other ordeal of the state gives us what our pension increases are, and then we have to back out of that to figure out what applies to the tax cap and what doesn't. So that was an unbelievable feat to get to this number in order to do this whole budget. You had to get that number first before we even went into this. So
And to your
Thank
point,
you.
To your point, I need to put this on the record. Our treasurer and our village attorney recommends that this board consider overriding the tax
Right.
cap, not necessarily for any political purpose or statement or for anything that may be considered to be confrontational or objective with respect to the budget, because we can bring a budget in under the cap. More so for interpretive reasons that you just
What I
mentioned.
just mentioned,
All
right.
of that. I mean, it could, at any time during the year, we could get an opinion from the state comptroller that perhaps one of the things that we thought, for example, there are issues with respect to perhaps the water contributions coming into the general
Refuse,
fund,
too.
whether or not those things are going to be considered to be things that should be excluded or included. We just
There's
don't
also a
know.
We couldn't override the
recommendation.
cap at that point if we had to.
No, you have to.
I think you have to do it in advance of adopting your budget,
Right.
because
At least
Albany
we-
made it a political statement,
in the
unfortunately.
hypothetical-
All this is a political statement, so.
Yes,
that's all
but
it
we're not, honestly, we did this budget in two ways. The first thing we did is we calculated a levy and we started there, just to see if we could get there. But we didn't need to. We're fortunate enough to have fairly stable appropriations.
Patty, can you run through a couple things for me before we wax poetic on this budget? Can you run through the fund balance, all the uses of, there's a sizable amount of fund balance that's being used,
Yeah,
coming from a
you've-
number of different sources. Can we run through those just really quickly?
Yeah, general fund, in addition to, general fund has a $350,000 fund balance appropriation.
Mm-hmm.
It has a transfer in of debt service surplus of $175,000. The water fund has a
That's
transfer
a
in.
one shot. That's
Yes.
a one shot.
Yeah.
Not to be
Now, the
repeated.
reason it's there, and again, that's the board's, the board has discretion whether or not to use it, but you do have to use your debt service surplus and return it to these funds.
Mhm.
It's going where it's supposed to
not
go. The
appropriate.
question
It's
is
not
it, yeah,
appropriate.
right, is it the amount? The debt service fund is also appropriating $100,000 in surplus to the water fund. I think that's about right, Mary? That's right. Refuse fund is not using fund balance this year, I don't believe. Let's see.
How much are we taking from water fund?
300,000.
Well, you're not,
Nothing this
it's-
year, right?
nothing in the current year, but next year's budget, again, is modeled on a $275,000 interfund transfer. It's not a fund balance transfer.
300, 187.
It's assuming that you raise that money in your water rents. If the money doesn't come in, we don't spend it.
275 or is it 3187?
It's 275.
Where are you coming up with 3187? I knew 275 too.
What's 3187?
300,187 is what showed on the 313 workup. Well, whatever. It's in the
Okay.
bulk.
Are you in?
We can explore that.
Are you looking at a fund balance statement or?
Appropriated fund balance in the adopted budget 2012-13 for the water fund. Right?
Oh, that's next year's fund balance appropriation for water. That's not the transfer in from, in addition to that, there's 100,000 from debt service surplus.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Okay, but that's in the operating
Right.
plan.
So-
So refuse fund, let's see. No appropriated fund balance to meet its budget, none in the pool fund, 350,000 in general, and 300,000 in water. All right, the 275 from debt
So the
service. as you see, is-
275 plus 300 from water is how it goes from 12% to 2%? The
in
fund
water-
balance?
In the water fund?
Yes.
Results of operations as well, yes. Yeah,
And results of operations.
right.
So, I mean, clearly the water fund and the water rates are something for serious consideration, as you yourself just said.
We've had this discussion for years, and every year we manage to manage without raising them. You know, it's hard to say where we're getting the revenue from when we have wet weather. You know, I mean, and we had a very wet summer. We had the wettest August on record last year. And then we had a cool fall, so.
Where do we stand on our water rates compared to, say, Chappaqua?
It's hard to say because a lot of communities have different structures. What they do in Chappaqua and Newcastle, I should say, and also Mount Pleasant does this. They take a portion of their operating and maintenance expenses and attribute it to a general fund tax. So not all of their water rates are attributed to the water fund. You know, so some of that falls on their tax bill. Here it doesn't. This is classically just, you know, what it costs to run a water department is paid for through water rent, not from any taxes here. You know, there are ways to change the model. There are reasons to change the model in some instances, but it's harder for us because we serve the village. We serve outside the village as well, and we can't collect taxes from people outside the village.
So Patty,
So it was easier for us to set this up as a separate fund.
again, I want to go back to the fund balance issue.
Mhm.
So we're using $800,000 because of fund balances to support this tax rate increase, of which $175,000 from debt service basically takes that down to nearly zero. So we can't really rely on that next year. And $275,000 is coming from water fund, which by all accounts will not really have much of a fund balance next year either. So that's,
Unless there's a drought.
Well, even if there's a drought, you know, we're under restrictions then. You know, it's a really tough model, you know, to
all I'm
to
saying
frame,
is that there's
because
$450,000 of fund balance that we're using to support a tax cap at this point, of which I'm not really sure is, or what we really need to think about. I'm not sure, I don't have enough information yet or not, but that's of concern that we can repeat that again next year.
No, that's fair. That's a very fair assumption and a very good analogy. That's true. You know, when we did the 5-year projection, we actually had a worse picture because we, you know, unless we saw our fund balance eroding rather quickly. I ran it again, and I'll share it with you, but running it again, at least, based on what we know, and what we've seen happen here with assessments, is that we anticipated at the end of this year being down to 15.86% in terms of fund balance ratio to the general fund's appropriations. We're actually 3% higher. We'll be at 18.61%, thereabout.
So,
The next year's budget will take us down to 16.6. We expected with our 5-year projection to be down to 8%. So
Yeah, but
we're a little
lot of
better.
it was that we had that debt service that we were able to bring in that we weren't anticipating.
No, well, that was in our model, but we structured things differently
Okay.
with respect to certioraries and other things. I mean, you know, there are ways to construct
Right.
the budget. But a $350,000 appropriation of surplus in and of itself is a reasonable appropriation for your general
I
fund.
don't have an issue with
I
that.
think that's fair. That's not a big hole. But other revenue in can create some problems. And structurally, we do have to return the debt service surplus. We'll have $90,000 next year. You're right. We're not going to have $175,000. We'll be down to 90. And, you know, we'll have to see where we are in terms of appropriations. And
Yeah, I'm not casting judgment yet that it's unreasonable. I'm just saying that that's a big hole that when I look out next year, I don't see
right.
I don't see a clear way that it fills.
Well, you can, vote to override, you have to vote to override every year, right?
Yeah, I mean,
So-
it'd be an annual,
It has to be an annual thing. And also, in addition to Mary, Pam, and council recommending overriding, I think NICOM and all of the other organizations, municipal organizations recommend the same. And as of December, there was 158 municipalities that overrode. 98 said no, and 46 were undecided. It looks like we're short on some municipalities in those numbers, but villages, of course, are all probably the undecided because they hadn't presented their budgets as of December.
Yeah, I know, but the point is, I mean, with the cap, next year you can only go up just under 200,000 again, and that's it.
the reality is-
So,
It's
that's...
It's all,
Right.
it's good news in many, many ways, and certainly we're in a better position than many, but what needs to be understood is that the noose gets tighter every year.
That is correct.
That's right.
And gets tighter in ways that ultimately, not too far down the road, possibly as soon as next year, mean, okay, what are you going to chop out? So that's a worthwhile and reasonable exercise, but an exercise that, in our case, I think it's fair to say that what we are doing is, for the most part, efficient. And although there are always ways to do more with less and to cut some fat out of the budget, there are no big opportunities left to save any significant amounts of money in doing what we do now. So, as you know, we've been through an extended discussion over the last now almost a year and a half regarding police services, looking at our options with the town of Mount Pleasant and seeking to look at our options with the county. And 18 months later, I think it's fair to say that we've not found significant savings opportunities with Mount Pleasant, although certainly there may be some shared services opportunities. And discussions with the county have bogged down to the point that it remains unclear what, if any, future remains there for us. So one of the things we do this hearing for is not only that it's required, but also to encourage the people who are watching to let us know what they think, which is to say, it's really extraordinarily good news to see what is essentially a flat budget in terms of our expenses really changing in only a very modest way from one year to the next, and absorbing significant spikes in pension and insurance costs through cuts and trims and adjustments everywhere else. So that can happen this year, and it can happen, I'm sure, in little ways next year. You run out of running room to do it. The other backdrop of the whole thing is, as you mentioned, Patty, the overall assessed base, where in an environment when taxes get as high as they've gotten, certainly collectively, county, town, school tax, village tax altogether, everybody perfectly understandably takes a harder look at their tax bill and says, hold it, am I paying a fair share? There are also lots of companies out there, as we all know, sending us postcards saying, hey, take a shot, we can reduce your taxes, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. I'm the last guy to argue against people challenging their taxes. That's part of the mechanism that's supposed to maintain fairness, but recognize that every time someone achieves a tax reduction, everybody else has to pay more. That doesn't mean it was unfair for the person to do what they did, but the reality is that when people who think they may have an opportunity to reduce their taxes are out there seeking to reduce what they pay, the people who are arguably underassessed are hiding in the bushes because obviously nobody's out there volunteering to pay more, especially if they think they may have a rather favorable assessment. So I throw that out there not with any certainty about what the right answer is, but if there's anything worse than a high tax environment, it's a high tax environment where you can't sit back and say that you think it's reasonably equitably distributed. So that's a problem we confront as we go forward. But as Patty mentioned, we have stabilized a little bit after a year of extremely high expenses for tax certs, but there remain a bunch of them out there. And what everybody has to realize, and as I say, I don't argue that you shouldn't challenge your taxes if you think they're unfair, but I caution everybody on all sides of the equation to realize that the pie is split up among us collectively based on our tax assessments, and anybody pays less, it means everybody else pays more. So if we confront a reduction in the tax base, a tax increase spikes automatically even if we don't spend another dime. So clearly the 2% tax cap is unsustainable, accepting some significant changes. Need to change the tape?
Yep.
All right, brief hiatus while we change tapes. We're back. Sorry for that brief break while the tape was being switched. So, at any rate, just to wrap up what I was saying, one of the things I throw out there is to the community, the entire budget, which is in its draft form, and we will be continuing to work on it over the next several weeks, leading towards the adoption of it at the end of the month. The entire budget is up there online, and you are able to download it at pleasantville-ny.gov and go through it at your leisure, and let us know what you think, and if you see aspects of that budget, or if your just opinion about how we do business in town suggests to you that there are things that you think perhaps we shouldn't be doing, that we should consider eliminating, we're more than happy to hear it. But certainly what's before you right now is a budget that is pretty darn tight, but which preserves the services we delivered last year.
Preserves the services that we need to deliver. However, there's nothing we can add. Like, there's no capital projects we can add. There's no improvements we can make to our village, to the recreation area, which I feel we need to do that, and other capital projects that have to be done, and there's no room for them in this budget. I don't see any room for them.
Well, the thing, yeah, and I appreciate that, because I did forget to talk capital.
Yes.
The tentative budget, traditionally, the way the village adopts it, it's typically just an annual operating plan.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't include our capital plan, although we do have one. As you know, there are elements of it in the book, and anytime during the year, if something does come up that the board wants to address, we can look at it from the perspective of appropriating funds, and typically capital plans involve long-term borrowing anyway. There are a number of things that we have to do in the next couple of years. There are things we're doing now that are going to require funding. For example, we'll be opening bids in May for the restoration and renovation of the Pleasantville Ambulance Corps building into a community recreation center. So we do need, when those bids come in, to make a decision if we're going to finally move forward on that and put that project together. We also are going to need to contribute to the proportionate share of the library roof. Town of Mount Pleasant is going to handle that in terms of financing that for us, but we will be obligated to pay principal and interest payments on that as well.
We have mandates at the pool.
We have
just on that subject, just to remind, not everybody who watches probably realizes that the Town of Mount Pleasant Library, which has its headquarters here in Pleasantville, and the branch over at the Valhalla Community Center near the Mount Pleasant Pool, is a joint venture of the Town of Mount Pleasant and the Village of Pleasantville, and there's a calculated formula, but in round figures, the town pays about 2/3 of the cost, and the village 1/3.
We also have some repair that will be needed to the roof of this building, but I have money in transfer to capital for that. I think we can cover it in the budget. And there were other renovations to the pool complex, and there were some. We were in the midst of doing some planning for parking lot improvements throughout the village, because they desperately need some attention, and we're looking at the revenue availability from parking permits and from fees and fines and meters to cover that. So we're hoping we can put something before the board, but we will have a capital plan. We do have things that we have to do, and because of the way those things are structured in terms of raising money for them, they don't necessarily affect the fiscal year that they're approved in. They'll affect the subsequent year. So, to Jonathan's point, it looks like we'll be close to a tax cap issue next year, if not exceeding it, just by our own design and our own plans, based on the structure of this budget and things we need to have done.
Just to be clear on my point, that is definitely one of my points, but we also have a $450,000 hole here that that we have to be cognizant of, and if we're going to go ahead with this budget, and there may be very good reasons to do that, throughout the year, if we're not seeing the water fund come back, and we only know we have $90,000 left in debt, it's got to affect the way we make decisions in terms of cutting and managing resources going forward. That's going to be, every week I'm going to be looking at that going, where are we? Because that's a big number to carry forward into the next year without a lot of assurances that we're going to make it up. And that's one of the things that I would request, that if we go ahead with this budget, that the staff is on top of, and that we're kept up to speed on that very closely, because that's a big number.
So it's a big number, and it's hard, as you know, there's so many things that affect
There is.
our revenue stream, but this year, to the good. I mean, if a lot of things happened that look like they're positive trends, and I'm hoping that next year, we were able to support a number of things, this year that we normally wouldn't have been able to. We had some compensation issues with people retiring that we had to be able to pull from our fund. We're not anticipating getting money from the water fund, and yet we're still coming in where we thought we'd come in at the end of the year with respect to the budget. So that's because other revenues are coming in higher, and it's also because expenses are lower than we thought they'd be. We had one snowstorm of significance, and that was in
We got
October.
lucky.
We did get lucky. So,
right, so we have to
and we
watch
could
that.
get, we never know, looking
The
ahead where
other thing I want to point out too, because you brought it up, but and I thought you were extremely nice in the way you described the current PBA negotiations. They don't exist right now. I mean, and they're working under a contract because they haven't come to the table yet. And so I just.
They are back. I mean, and then we did meet last
I'm
week.
glad to hear
We
they're
met
back.
last
I'm not
week,
sure.
but
I'll see it when I believe it. But
there's been a little hiatus.
My only point being that it's really hard to make these budgets when indeed
I know.
they,
I
we
know.
don't get good. It's been a year and we can't get the unions to speak to us about a contract. Because they find it maybe a little bit beneficial to exist under Triborough, which the whole community is aware of because it's the same rule that protected the teachers, which they managed to find a way through it. So I just encourage our PBA, let's get to the table, let's wrap this up and figure out where we stand, because quite frankly, it makes this whole process a lot harder.
Yeah,
Likewise,
Thank
I think
you.
that unanimous
And
opinion
I
is
think they
right.
needed to hear that too. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why they were not in a hurry.
Whatever. A year is a long time for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
So let's just get to the table and get this thing figured out. We don't need to go on anymore on it other than to say, I've watched it happen. I'm tired of seeing nothing happen. I think the whole board is.
Yeah.
So let's,
Well, it's not on your end, believe me. We've been waiting, we've invited, we've cajoled,
Okay. I know.
we
I know what
tried,
you've done.
but they've come to the table. They responded last week with a proposal. We're happy to have it.
Okay, good.
We're
I
gonna
didn't know
give the
that.
board some feedback on that. CSEA came to the table as well, same day. Had a marathon last Wednesday. I think we'll probably get a CSEA contract by the end of this month.
Wow. Okay, good.
So
Good
that's
for
a
them.
very good sign. They've been very responsive. They have a good understanding of, the economic climate and what our goals are. So I have a high degree of confidence that both of these groups will be settled in
Good.
very short, in due time now.
We need them to be settled. So.
I agree. It causes a lot of problems for us.
The last point I wanted to mention is that at the fiscal policies that we enacted a year or year and a half ago also incorporate the notion of moving to an ongoing funding of a capital fund, so that expenses that we've historically issued bonds for, we can buy with cash, things like trucks and the like. And the fiscal circumstances and the 2% tax cap make it extremely difficult ever to switch to that model, because you've got that dark period when you're both paying the old bonds at the same time as you're trying to change the model and pay into a fund so that you have cash when it goes. So,
But we're trying. We do have money in here to do that.
yeah.
Not a lot, a little over $80,000 to
So-
transfer to capital mostly. Maybe
80.
I need about 18 for this roof.
Right.
But other than that,
So,
we're going to
we're
talk about a
inching
reserve.
towards, I think, what's clearly a better model for the community going forward, but inching is the right way to describe it.
Yeah.
Because we just can't afford to do otherwise. And
It's about a 1% appropriation that I put in
I
right
would
now.
also say, not specific to the village of Pleasantville, but certainly statewide, you wonder what this kind of budgeting mindset does in environments where people just sort of kick the can down the road on long-term planning. I won't do the roof, I won't replace X, Y, or Z. Maybe it'll be better next year. Let's pray for better times. So that certainly hasn't been the attitude we've taken, but I am fearful that there is sort of disinvestment in our infrastructure built into the notion of the tax cap.
Yeah, and I don't see this board going down that slippery slope,
I
fortunately.
I don't either.
You just can't
and I don't
afford
mean to
make
deny the value of the tax cap as a potential, external piece of discipline to everybody.
Right, that's right.
There's value there. But odd times these are, to say the least. So,
You projected mortgage taxes flat, and do we really see
We
that?
got stung on that number the last couple of years, but yeah, I think we're safe with a flat projection. In fact, my association went around and we'd all talked it out, and we all feel that this is reasonable. I do anticipate a little more in sales tax, but again, there's no reason to, be anything but conservative with our revenues right now. We could afford to underestimate revenues. I think that's a better approach. Too many of the communities that are in trouble right now have been, a little unrealistic.
The county.
With their revenue projections, and they've not gone back to correct them. As Jonathan says, you have to pay attention, to your operations. And unfortunately, as I said, I'm reminded every week as to what needs to be amended in the budget and where we may be running surpluses and where we may be running into trouble. I have a very accurate real-time online accounting system here, and my conscience is sitting in the audience there, and we're doing a good job keeping it together.
you have red, yellow, and green lights on your desk, depending on the
I have that.
minute-to-minute
I have something you
status.
spin, and it makes decisions.
All right, thank you for that, Patty.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anything
Are
else,
there
ma'am?
are there comments from the floor or anybody who would like to call in at 769-1677? We're happy to hear from anybody who might have something to say, either in the context of this meeting or either directly to any of us, to Patty, to our treasurer's office over the next couple of weeks. We still have some further departmental work sessions, and we'll be going through the budget line by line with a few remaining departments to be done. It is possible, but not certain, that we would be voting on a proposed final budget 2 weeks from today, the 23rd. If we didn't vote on it on that occasion, we would have to schedule a special meeting to do so after the 23rd, but before the end of the month.
We're meeting that Monday, the 30th, I believe, in work session, so if we have to, we can do
Right.
a resolution that time.
Right.
But thank you, and thank all of you for helping support our budget.
So again, any questions, comments? Welcome.
All right, guys.
Good. Just, we know who you are, but give us your name and address for the record.
Matt Benani on Broadway. I want to...
You can just pull around there, just push the cord a little bit.
I want to applaud the work that was done on the budget. I know a lot of hard work was done, and I just want to, from the perspective of the taxpayers in the town, I want to, with the consideration of this, tax cap, I think, and I don't know if anybody else looks at it this way, but, if you tack on about 8 to 10 years of this tax cap at a 2 to 3% increase, you're looking at a 20 to 25% increase on an already pretty high level of taxes that we pay. So I don't know if anybody else looks at it that way, but you have to consider that. And by if in consideration of overriding the tax cap, I think you have to really consider that too, because if it comes, if it happens on a year-to-year basis, I think that's a challenge right now to live in this town for people to actually. I see a lot of shingles out, people trying to sell their houses, and you talk to people outside of this town in other states, and you ask them if they even consider living in the county of Westchester. Some are like, I I don't think so. It's just the taxes are way too high. So anyway, I had some questions on, you talk about your union negotiations, the CSEA, there's negotiations going on, and I'm wondering what the goal is, if there is a negotiation, or if they come to you with a proposal and then you basically live with that, or what's the process of that?
I mean, that certainly has never been the case in any of our negotiations, better times or worse times. Each side has had its list of wants and wishes, and in the end, the resolution has been somewhere in between.
Right. Because again, thinking about it from the taxpayer's perspective, and we obviously value the work that the workers do, but what is, I think, and if I'm wrong, I looked at the budget and the health care contributions that the union workers, what is it, about $121,000?
Total. It's a very low contribution.
Total. And how many are there? How many retired and...
I don't know how many retirees we have on the
retired plus current working?
Our current working is what, 70?
Census, maybe 72 full-time
Right.
now.
Plus
We can get you the
retired?
census of retired, but
That's with uniform.
Sorry, that's everybody.
That's everybody, that's
That's
uniform,
everybody
but
full-time.
non-uniform. That's
Higher
SEA
Yeah.
and PBA.
higher contributions to health insurance premiums is one of our priority items.
Right, so it's roughly about $1,000 per, the contributions are maybe $1,000, $1,200 per?
If you went per capita, but people are paying on proportionate to income, the higher paid pay more.
Okay.
But again, it's all subject to negotiation.
Right, so you look at it in the taxpayers, the average person in Pleasantville, right? If they do have a job, which a fair amount do, their health care contributions, and you're living through the same world. We're
Yes,
paying
sir.
on average $6,000 to $10,000, right? I just talked to somebody who's paying $19,000 the other day. So there's, that's 8 to 10 times more.
That would be
Full
me.
contribution.
Yeah, right.
Right, so,
As you know, you and I have had this
Right.
variance of this discussion, Matt. A higher contribution to healthcare is a goal of ours in all of our negotiations. What's realistic to achieve versus what we might achieve is obviously affected by what else exists in the county. Obviously, everybody tries to spin that in their favor, but I certainly have supported the county executive's goals of increasing healthcare contributions by employees, and we seek that here too.
and then, you were talking, Peter, you were talking about getting to the point where, do we have to cut things? Do we have to get rid of things in the
Right.
budget? I'm just wondering, you're talking about the police department and talking about the consolidation with maybe the county.
Right.
But has there been a conversation about shared services maybe in the other areas, like the recreation or, with the town of Mount Pleasant?
Well, as you may know, Harry Caniff, former rec superintendent here, is the rec superintendent of the town of Mount Pleasant. So, we have a relationship there, and in fact, some shared services go back and forth in general, shared equipment, all of that, the same with DPW. Our overall net cost for our rec department, that is, cost of services and staff minus revenue received, means that it isn't a tremendously big piece of our budget pie. Obviously, if you can save anywhere, you should, and it's worth a discussion. But I think, as you and I have also talked, police and DPW are the two big pieces of the picture, and DPW is a place where on a sunny day in the spring you think you could cut, and on a snowy day in the winter you wish you had more people. So we have tried pretty hard to balance out the workforce with the need to maintain a flexible capacity to respond when the going gets tough. The year 2011, the going got tough a lot. We have just had a retirement of Steve Johnson, our longtime DPW superintendent, and I think are close to the resolution of his replacement. And it will be interesting to get a different perspective on how all that works. I think Steve has done a great job, but new eyes are helpful eyes. That's going to be useful as you may have heard if you've listened to last year's budget and the one before that, we've spent some money that actually is costing us more money this year than if we hadn't done it, to buy new, more flexible trucks that we can run with fewer people. Plowing and salting in a single pass instead of two, that sort of stuff, trying to work towards a more flexible workforce, being able to deliver the service with fewer people down the road. Just right now, it's costing us more money because we've got new trucks and new bonds. But we're looking at all that stuff.
Can I just add something
Sure.
too, is that recreation is revenue producing.
Right.
And also, the other thing about recreation is, a good recreation program, a good rec center, community center, adds to your property value. There's no two ways about that. That's a given. So to go without that and take that out and source it out elsewhere, it's really the wrong department to do that with, although we do it where we can. Like there are some programs that we offer in conjunctions with other towns or villages. One of the big ones is the premiere night at Mount Pleasant for the teens. That's something that, we don't have one here, but
Skateboard park.
and the skateboard park is another one, which is a loser,
Right.
but, it is an example of a shared service.
Right.
But it's a revenue-producing department, and it is one that it does increase, goes to your property values. People look at, before they move into a community, they're going to look at schools, and schools are your biggest, sorry Shane, but, 72% of your taxes are sent to the schools. The village is not we're very lean, very, very, very lean. And they're going to look at, what type of recreation, quality of life that it offers a family. And a lot of young families move into the village of Pleasantville because of our schools.
Right.
And they don't have, when they have maybe a shoddy pool facility, they're going to go spend their money at the Mount Pleasant nice pool facility. If they have not a recreation department, they're going to go spend their money in Mount Pleasant. So, it adds to the overall quality of this village. And
Now, you bring up the subject of the pool. I noticed that Armonk,
that was a
It's
private.
privatizing their
pool. They have had problems with ALE for 25 years. They had a huge reconstruction of that pool that they couldn't pay back the bond. This was years ago. They had summers with no pool whatsoever. And it serves a very different community there. That's, it was a public-private. It was once a private pool, then it went public, and then now it's obviously going to go back to private.
right?
Well, the pool is just an example where if we were to say eliminate the pool as a program from the village.
Not eliminate it, but if you privatize something, you're not eliminating it.
You want to buy it? You know how many upgrades you have to do on it according to the state?
Privatize it, whatever. Get it off our budget.
Right. Get it off our bucket.
What that conceivably would do is protect us against capital costs down the road. It actually wouldn't do anything to the budget right now because the revenues and the expenses are about equal.
Yeah. We make money with the programs we have
Where we
there.
get in trouble, where the revenues aren't going to fund, is capital upgrades. So when the day comes to, rebuild the pool, that obviously
It won't without an
that's
increase.
that's
It
not
won't without
gonna-
an
right.
increase in the
So,
rents.
Just not to digress, but the
Right,
police, the police, for example, remains to be seen, and we've asked for the numbers and have some of them about the actual experience the town of Ossining had in its first full year with outsourced police services provided by the county. But their force was roughly the same size as ours, maybe a little bit smaller, and the savings numbers at one point were presented to be about $900,000 a year, then scaled back, I think, for a variety of reasons. Sounded like they might turn out to be $600,000 a year, something like that. So using that as sort of a loose template, let's just say the outside possibility for the village of Pleasantville might be to save $1 million a year with outsourced police services to the county. And again, we have no proposal from the county. We've been talking to them for 15, 16 months, and it's not clear that we'll ever get a proposal from the county. And the longer it goes, the less viable I think it is. But nonetheless, let's say it's $1 million. That's obviously real money, and it's real money saved over years So it's savings that continue, and the presumed savings might even grow a bit over time, depending on how the costs of the county contract might be controlled. But the point I wanted to make about that is that's sort of the outboard end. That would be a major whack at the budget, and it would probably save the average homeowner $400 or $500 maybe in their tax bill after the deductibility of their taxes, $300 or $400 out of pocket. So not that that's not real money. Absolutely, it's real money. If I could save the average taxpayer $300 or $400, I'm all over trying to do it. But the piece of it I think everybody has to realize is it's not life-changing. It's not causing you to say, well, I'm going to stay here through retirement when I thought I wasn't, or I'll buy the house when I thought I wouldn't. It's incremental change. There isn't any masterstroke that takes your taxes from village taxes from $5,000 a year to $2,500.
Right.
Just isn't there.
No, but I mean, something
Not if
like
you
that
want-
sends
yeah.
a signal.
Yeah.
Sends a signal to the state or to people outside the state. That Pleasantville or in New York is doing something to control their taxes and make things better.
And God knows we're trying.
And might even help the
Yeah.
borrowing rates too.
We're hoping not to borrow.
Well, I mean, you're right.
So
Does a reduction in the fund balance affect the borrowing rates?
sure,
It can.
it
Too
can.
much.
I mean, we, as I may have mentioned to you, have some debt retiring in a few years, so that our debt costs, assuming we don't issue a lot of new debt, would start to taper off, and that would be a happy story. And so we are clearly going to have to bond some new things. Indeed, the next couple of weeks we're going to be talking about what we have to bond over the next 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. But we would like to create an environment down the road where, the board that follows us has less indebtedness and more of a cash and carry capital plan in place.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
for coming.
Appreciate
Thanks
the
for being here.
suggestions.
Anybody else? All right.
Mary, you want to comment on the budget?
As I say, we will be continuing to be thumbing through the pages of these fat notebooks over the next several weeks, and find any of us at any point to offer comments. And you can always drop by or send a message to Patty Dwyer at Village Hall with any thoughts and comments you have as well. And again, pleasantville-ny.gov, you can download the whole 9 yards. Is there a motion to close the public hearing on the budget?
So,
Second? All in favor?
aye.
Aye. We already did resolution 69, so Mindy, number 70.
Resolved that the pre-check register dated April 9th, 2012, covering checks numbers 71921 to 72061 has been reviewed, and they are hereby approved as listed below, covering the general fund, miscellaneous fund, water fund, capital fund, refuge fund, pool fund, trust and agency fund, for a total of $196,892.06.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or questions?
I had one on page 2, Locust Road water main repair. Was there an,
We have private systems outside the village up
Okay.
on an area we call the right-of-way up behind 7-Eleven.
Okay.
Notoriously has leaks and breaks, and we contract out the repair of those lines and attach those costs to the homeowners that are affected by the break.
so these costs will be attached to the homeowner?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Motion approved. Jonathan?
Resolved that the Board of Trustees has reviewed the minutes of the meeting held on Monday, March 26, 2012, and Monday, April 2nd, 2012, and they are hereby approved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Comments, corrections?
Yeah, again, me. Colleen wasn't a trustee on the 26th, and she's listed as present, and I think it was Steve.
I jumped the gun.
You jumped the gun, yeah. Only because,
Judy had a vision.
yeah.
There you go.
No, but you have Steve in the, you have Steve
Steve
in
is
the,
everywhere else in the,
everywhere else.
in the
It
resolution.
was just in the front.
Oh.
And then the Monday, April 2nd minutes were those of the special annual organizational
Yes.
meeting. So,
Thank you.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Number 72, right.
Whereas bids were advertised in the village's official newspaper for tree removal and pruning services, and whereas bids were received and opened on Friday, March 9, 2012, as follows. The bidder, Ramos Tree Services, daily rate $8.50, emergency rate per hour $1.50. Olmsted bid a daily rate $1,500, emergency rate $22.85. Care of Trees, daily rate bid $16.56, emergency rate $2,024, and Dom's Tree Service bid daily rate $28.77 with an emergency rate per hour $5.25. Now therefore be it resolved, the Board of Trustees hereby awards the bid for tree removal and pruning services to Ramos Tree Services, Inc., 49 Midland Terrace, Yonkers.
Is there a second?
Second.
So we had held this over from the last meeting, and you gave us the backup for it, and I read through it, and I'm convinced that Ramos is fairly and justifiably the low bidder, and by all accounts has
And they
provided good
read
service.
the spec. The other,
But I am also convinced that the other players misunderstood the spec as regards the emergency rate per hour. I don't think, had they correctly interpreted it, that it would have changed the ultimate result.
No,
But
we didn't either.
I do think that we need to change that spec the next time we use it.
I don't know how to make it clearer. It says rate per hour.
Well, I have a couple of possible thoughts about how to make it clear. So,
Okay.
all in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. Number 73, colleague.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the village administrator to sign the agreement with Computel Consultants for utility billing review as set forth in their proposal letter dated April 3rd, 2012.
Is there a second?
Second.
Patty, you want to describe this?
Yeah, this is out of sheer desperation. This is like that show Network where you open the window and you say you're mad as you know what and don't want to take it anymore. But we have received in the past month and a half bills from our power authority to the tune of $6,000 over our normal bill because they've reclassified our old rec center wrong in terms of the electrical rate that's supposed to be charged for a building that hasn't been occupied in 4 years. And then following that $6,000 bill, we had gotten a bill for close to $9,000 for telephone lines that we've been paying monthly. But one of our services decided that they too had omitted certain things from our bills, and we can't chase these things. I mean, these bills come with a great deal of they're very complex, the way that they're written, the way that they're subscribing rates to us, their mileage charges for the line charges, some are telemetry, they're not always phone bills, and they're not always clear, they're not always metered services. So NICOM recommends this particular company called Computel to come in. NICOM is our affiliate at the New York Conference of Mayors, to come in and to perform third-party audits of all of our utilities. I need to have it done because I know that we're going to see substantial savings and probably refunds by the time this is all done. We've been chasing both of those vendors, and it's as you could imagine, it's very frustrating to be told by any of them that they're going to shut down our lines or shut our lights off if we don't pay the bills when we all along have been paying and doing what we thought was right.
So it's a contingency fee deal where they get 40% of whatever they produce
It is.
as a refund.
It's very common, for these services to take that approach. They split revenue for a certain period of time, and then we're on our own after that.
Well, what is that period?
I think under this agreement, is it,
2 years?
hold on, I'll tell you in a second.
Usually
I don't want to speak out of turn, but
the number of firms that do this.
I don't see a term on the...
I think it's just one.
I would like to suggest that it be a one-year term.
Well, I mean, they're
Probably.
I don't see a term of agreement.
it's just one. They compensated 40% of all recovered funds.
Okay, but...
So it's just an annual-
But if before you sign it, you could just add to this consulting agreement that the term of this agreement is made in that first paragraph, this agreement is made on X date 2012 between aforesaid, and it expires unless mutually agreed 1 year later.
No, not a problem.
Great. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. 74. Indeed.
Is it me?
Yeah.
Is it?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I thought, did you
I
read
just
that?
read
You
it.
read that? Oh, God, I'm asleep here. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville hereby authorizes the village attorney to proceed with the settlement of certiorari petition for the Getty Petroleum marketing as follows. I got this last time, too. now that I
Yes,
think
you
of
got tabled.
And I read it all, and Jonathan got mad at me. I thought I did a great job on it, too, to be
Sum it
honest. It goes from 2006 to 2011. The original assessment on all years is $80,600. Should I just read the total refund?
Sure.
Good
Okay.
idea.
As stated herein, you have a corrected assessment, a reduction, and a refund. The total refund is $695.77. So further resolved that the village treasurer is authorized to issue the applicable refunds in the amount of $6,695.77 to the petitioner's attorney upon receipt of an executed order from the court.
There's a second.
Second.
So this is an agreement that covers 6 years of challenge taxes, a total refund for the 6 years together, $66.95, and we have a confidential document from our attorney, John Burkhardt, Keenan Dean, describing it. Anybody have questions or comments?
It didn't change.
It did not change. The letter changed.
The letter
backup letter,
changed.
which
They-
had some
they-
flaws.
Yeah, they
Right.
corrected it, but did they assess it on the correction, or did they?
He asserts that the error, that the Jim Timmings basis for the property was based on its actual use, and that he had simply picked up the petitioner's original description of the property. So,
Well, and one more time, I'm just sick and tired of 6 years going by before we all gather it all together and have to give them a refund of $6,500. It's just,
well, as you know,
You're right.
we continue to have that
Tired of this.
discussion, although it would
Are we
appear.
having that discussion?
Well, I've had this discussion with the assessor as well as the attorney. It appears possible, maybe even probable, that we cannot force action within 4 years. Stay tuned.
That's bizarre.
Wait, what did you
I
just
just
say?
don't
You can't
get
compel
that.
them, you can't
It
make
is-
them
it
come to the
appears
table.
possible.
Oh, you can't compel them
that-
to.
I'm not
So
saying
the
that
cards
that's
are stacked
certain,
in their
but
favor.
it is.
In so many different ways.
There is some reason to think that we cannot compel action in the first 4 years. So, stay tuned. We continue to work on that. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Number 75, Jonathan.
I think trustee Wagner can help us with that.
Me?
No, with some information on certioraries and processes.
Oh,
Maybe
well,
we can get some.
Oh, good. The Board of Trustees hereby approves the following budgets. This is to fund over budget accounts. We're going to take $415 from the assessor software to miscellaneous Board of Trustees, $9,669 from judgment and claims to village tax, village property, $38,285 from contingency to police administration sick buyout, $618 from Clinton Street equipment to Clinton Street repair and maintenance, $3,139 from Social Security to water transmission outside services, and $3,000 from law contractual services to sanitation, gas, and oil. That's creative. For a total amount of $55,126.
Is there a second?
Second.
Contractual law services to sanitation.
Well, it's the refuse fund. They don't have a lot of
Isn't that
room.
the same thing?
They had a little bit of a budget.
Garbage in, garbage out. Oh, did I
So
say this?
these are transfers within the existing budget that don't raise the budget itself.
That's correct.
In an effort to create the required balance in all the accounts. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. I'm going to add one more resolution, number 76, and that is that at our organization night last week, we did not appoint a village prosecutor. We've been in some discussions about the staffing for our village justice court, but we need to have a prosecutor in place for the timely operation of the court, and so I propose as resolution number 76 that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville hereby appoints David Whalen as interim prosecutor in the Village Justice Court.
Second.
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 All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Any further business?
I just have one thing. I came down Easter Sunday morning, and in the paper, I open it up, step into spring, I see our own Parks and Recreation Advisory Board member, Christina Lang, on the front cover
very
with my
nice.
friend and neighbor, Louise Edelman, and there's a whole story on them walking through the beautiful streets of the Village of Pleasantville.
What should have
They
been
do every
Judy.
morning.
Yes, every afternoon.
I see them
They didn't
often.
mention Boozer, who waits for them in the afternoon. He hangs out in my car window. Pardon me? That's the Journal News. It's not your review, Brian.
So Christina and Louise clearly
Yes,
have...
and there's another picture of them inside. It's like, you know, they got like, look at them walking down the streets, and they talk about walking around the village and how beautiful it is and all that kind of stuff. So,
Great news. Thank you,
Yes.
Christina and Louise, for both having a good agent to get this
Yes.
placement and for putting the Village of Pleasantville in a positive light. I was happy to see yesterday I picked up a copy of Westchester Magazine. The new edition has best places to live in Westchester, and Pleasantville, New York is prominently mentioned, indeed mentioned on the front cover as the best place to live for cultural pursuits. And there is also a very nice picture there of the Village Bookstore. So happy to see Pleasantville front and center as the cultural mecca of Westchester County. So
in the good smells. And
we end where we began, which is to send warm welcome and hearty congratulations to our new police lieutenant, Eric Grutzner. Certainly not new to us, having worked his way up through the ranks as patrolman and as a sergeant, and I think our first, if not one of the first, bicycle patrolmen. Maybe he'll be our first bicycle lieutenant. What do you think, Chief?
No way.
So,
That's a
I think I got a no on that. But congratulations to Eric Grutzner for achieving a very high rank in the Pleasantville Police Department, second in command, and congratulations, Chief Love, to you and to the entire department. A happy night for PPD. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, good night. Thank you all. See you back in 2 weeks. And again,
Bye, Mom.
comments for the budget are welcome.